Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Just want to confirm that the sun did indeed come up this morning. The sun is up. I'm looking out my window right now. Didn't feel that way for a large chunk of last night. Judd, that Substack doesn't write itself, so your head hit the pillow at about 2:15, 2:30 last night. Dex and I were.
That's a good point. I wonder if I could.
Actually, I mean, AI. You could.
AI. I was just going to say. I wonder if I could get the Substack to pen its own column.
You could probably, like, legitimately just type in a couple of quick thoughts, like, "Hey, it's Judd. I feel this. Here are my three main opinions in one sentence. Write the 1,000-word epitaph expanding on them, and then set my alarm for 7:15.
And then do the show for me tomorrow.
Some coffee. Yeah.
I'm going to sleep in.
That day's coming too. We got our hottest Vikings takes here as we put the season to bed and a wildly disappointing, embarrassing loss last night. But B, just as importantly, or maybe more importantly, we love the offseason on this show. And our offseason discussions, how do you make this thing better? What are the next steps? What does the future look like? If you're a Vikings fan that kind of pieces out after the season's over, this show continues 7 days a week, starting today, all throughout the offseason. And some of our most fun, debating shows are January, February, March, all the way through draft season. So we will get out in front of that starting today, and then you'll just have stuff sprinkled in throughout the week too. But the hottest takes are powered in part by our friends at Standard, Dex. Let's tell them.
That's right. Those furnace have to be nice and hot, and so do these hot takes. They also have to be very nice and hot. Our friends at Standard Heating can make sure that furnace is running nice and smoothly. Manufacturers recommend tune-ups and maintenance every year, and if you're not doing it, that's going to be a problem. And in fact, maybe you're looking for work. Maybe you've recently are about to graduate high school, and you're looking to maybe get into the technician world with HVAC systems and furnace. Standard Heating will help you get certified and trained to start working for a great company to keep those hot takes and to keep those furnace moving. Go to standardheating.com. You can sign up for their Smart Club maintenance plan, too. It gives you discounts on services and whatnot. Standardheating.com.
All right, Judd. You've got the pie chart of blame that's been cooking all night. We're going to get to that. But why don't you lead us off with your hottest Vikings take here? I'm curious, now that everyone has slept on this, are we more up, and even comment section too, are we more furious waking up? Are we more calm? Curious to see where everyone's at here. So Judd's going to lead us off.
I've decided to put a different spin on this. So I'm not going to do a hottest take off of what transpired in Glendale, Arizona last night. Talked about it for 2 hours post-game. So here is my hottest take. The Vikings should trade Jordan Addison this offseason.
Wow, dude. Look at this guy.
The Vikings should trade Jordan Addison this offseason. Allow me to explain, elaborate, and then we can discuss, because that's what we do here. So any hope of franchising Sam Darnold, and perhaps, if he had played well in those last 2 games, 3 games perhaps, you go to the divisional round, you franchise him, you trade him, you probably get a decent draft pick, high draft pick, second rounder probably. That's out the window. This team needs draft picks, okay? Jordan Addison, who I think is really good, but hear me out here. First of all, is likely going to be suspended for a few games, not a bunch, 2 or 3 probably, 3 tops, because of his off-season DWI arrest in Los Angeles last year. He has now had back-to-back years where there has been an off-the-field issue during the off-season. He is a productive player, and I would argue that I think he could be the number 1 receiver for some teams. I'm getting out while the getting's good, 2 years into his rookie contract, so the value of that contract is still extremely high, and I am trading him for draft picks or a very high draft pick because the Vikings desperately need draft capital. Jordan Addison, I am going to trade him while his value is probably going to be at its highest point, aside from the potential upcoming suspension. It's been fun. It's been great, but I am maximizing
It's been great fun.
your value. It's been real. It's been fun, but it hasn't been real fun. I'm maximizing your value.
Wow. I think if you would have given me 100 cracks at what your hottest take was to guess, Dex, I don't know if I would have guessed that hottest take. I don't think I had that in my top 100 for Judd today.
I think if I'd have been fringe on the big boards there, I was kind of open to that idea even after the whole situation last summer of after this year, do you entertain maybe moving on from him? You can kind of replenish wide receivers. It feels like easier than you can before. They get expensive, but you remove him from the offense. It does make life a lot more difficult. I could see a case. And also, for the right package, yes, he is not an untouchable player by any means on this team.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. What do you think you could get for him? I agree. Draft capital, it'd be nice to have a second-round pick. I mean, hell, an extra first-round pick would be amazing. So he has flirted with 1,000 yards in his first 2 seasons as the number 2 behind one of the highest volume number 1s in NFL history. He does have 19. He has a nose for the end zone, as they say. He has 19 touchdowns in 2 years.
Chris Carter, yeah. All he does is catch touchdown passes.
And get arrested. But
that's the problem.
Let's start here. What do you think you could get for him if you floated him to some wide receiver desperate team?
Well, if it's a wide receiver desperate team, I think you could get the very least a second-round pick and a later-round pick. 5th-round pick?
I think that's probably fair.
Is that then more valuable than having Jordan Addison under rookie scale contract for 2 more years while you bring in a first-year starter that needs infrastructure and targets and threats down the field?
If I trusted him off the field, no, but I don't. I'm trying to maximize what I know. There also have been hints here and there. He's sort of a quiet guy, and with quiet guys, you can't tell if it's sullen or like, hey, he's just a quiet dude.
It's a little too quiet.
So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to beat this to the punch, because here's my thing. I'm never extending him. There's too many unanswered questions. I'm maximizing. I tried to get inside the head of Kwesi last night and knock around and think about the money ball, how he perceives things. And I think that the Vikings have an asset here. The other thing is, after last night, and really the O'Connell regime, I also think I am prioritizing a more diversified offense. So while I would like to have, I want to have a number 2 receiver who's certainly a threat. But that being said, we go back to what we've talked about. Need to improve the interior of the offensive line. Quite frankly, I think you need a playmaking running back, a playmaker back there. Kevin O'Connell needs to be, if nothing else, given a reason to utilize more facets of the game. Because if there's a criticism from the last 2 games of O'Connell's play calling, it's that his desire to have Sam drive the ball downfield, which, by the way, worked for a lot of the season, dried up, and he really didn't have the players or the plan to go to, okay, we got to have a short passing running game here and basically eliminate Sam a bit.
So I love the reckless speculation. I don't love the idea of trading a really cheap offensive asset for a first year. Like if you were talking about Josh Allen's your starting quarterback and, hey, man, we just needed to kind of create a couple. I mean, hell, even I know he flamed out in the playoffs, but the Chargers said, hey, Justin Herbert, we're paying you like $50 million and you're super talented. So we're actually going to say goodbye to a couple established receivers. Can you turn Lab McConkey into a thing? That's why you get paid $50 or $55 million. So my first instinct is I'm always here for some reckless speculation. I think we're a year away from the trade Jordan Addison discussion because I'd like to milk one more year, elevate JJ McCarthy. But to your point, the Vikings are very heavy on glitzy fringe players, receivers, tight end that they're paying a lot of money to, even on defense. edge rushers, linebackers, safeties, trinket players. They need more players that are 275 to 320 pounds that put a hand in the ground to start a play. Mm-hmm. They need guards. They need interior defensive linemen. So if there is a way to maybe skimp a little bit off the fringe, glitzy outside players, you still got Jefferson. If that helps you improve your trenches, Kevin O'Connell, that's the most blatant he's been last night, just openly throwing a position group under the bus. Like, he'll do it with quarterbacks sometimes, but he flat out said interior offensive line play is something we are going to look long and hard at starting tomorrow in the offseason.
Yeah. But now the key is doing it. Doing it. Like he talked about, like the whole thing of toughening up training camp was to have a tougher team for when? For January. But what I want to have is a backfield where if O'Connell does not use them, you can have a very good case to say, Kevin, you're screwing up. Like right now, his default is, what am I supposed to do? Aaron Jones is hurt. I love, and he does, Cam Akers, but he's tore to Achilles. So what I want to do is, one, I want to reposition how you think play calling a little bit. But two is, I'm trying to beat the clock on a kid who's had, two issues in the offseason, who appeared at times disgruntled, whose old man is on Twitter constantly like chirping everybody.
Yeah.
There's just if Jefferson is the anti-red flag guy, and he definitely is, Addison's a red flag guy.
Yeah, I think another question here is obviously, okay, you need other players to catch passes and other players to be weapons down the field, and who are those players? Are they on the is Tristan Jackson ready? Are there players not on the team? Because it's not Sherfield, it's not Powell.
No, it's young players.
I don't know if it's Jalen Naylor. He had one of the highest drop rates in the NFL, although he was explosive in some other ways. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of questions, but I'm all here for the reckless speculation here on this Tuesday. So real quick, I want to give you my hottest Vikings take here, and then we'll go Dex and we'll go pie chart. So Dan chimes in and says, Phil, we needed therapy last night. Your macro talks were not helping. Toxic positivity, as some people called it. I just want to tell you, a good therapist, right? Listen, old Dex tweets, old Macadac, we've done some therapy in our lives, unpack some things. Mm-hmm. Dead parents when you're young, there's things to unpack. If you walk into a therapist's office and all they do is placate and tell you exactly what you want to hear and agree with you for an hour, they are taking your money. We are here, in my case last night, kind of solo, flying all by myself with my takes. We are here to tell you sometimes, Vikings fans, things you don't want to hear, but that you need to hear. And that leads me to my hottest Vikings take this morning. Last night was a great night in Minnesota Vikings history. Last night was a breakup you didn't see coming. And I know Declan has experienced this about a bajillion times in his life. It's a breakup you didn't see coming, but it changes you for the better. It alters your life for the better. The future this morning is clear. The future is bright. The Vikings have full clarity as a franchise today based on what happened last night and in Week 18 against the Lions. And I know while it makes everyone in the short term want to fire people and rage and vent and all those things, those feelings of anger after 64 years, the Vikings are a perfect 64 for 64 in letting you down at the end of a season. I understand why people are angry after last night. But you wake up this morning and there is no quarterback decision. There's no head coach decision. I know there's a fringe, crazy group of fans that think Kevin O'Connell should be on a hot seat, and that is wild to me. But you now have full clarity going into the free agency months and the draft season. Kevin O'Connell, certainly not perfect these last 2 weeks. I'm sure Judd's pie chart will reflect criticism for him here in the short term, but he has proven to be an excellent NFL head coach if you take a step back. He has the fourth highest career regular season win percentage of any active NFL coach. He won 13 games with Kirk Cousins, a career 500 quarterback. He won 14 games with Sam Darnold, deemed as one of the great busts in recent NFL history. He's a culture builder. Maybe he could have done a couple things differently here and there. I don't know that he can get Sam Darnold to stop seeing ghosts in the two biggest games of the year. He looked as exasperated on the sidelines as we did watching the game. I think he knew what was happening. Sam Darnold, while talented, former top 3 overall pick, and we saw that talent rise to the surface, made your quarterback decision so easy these last 2 weeks. It would have been nice if he preserved some value where you could for sure franchise tag him and trade him for a second-round pick. But nonetheless, this morning, you can move forward without making an epic mistake and a $160 million 4-year contract to a guy that would probably cap your upside at 9 or 10 wins maybe. Half the league is currently paying $40+ million for quarterback play, and a lot of those quarterbacks aren't carrying those franchises. The Vikings avoid that mistake. They avoid the Kirk Cousins mistake 2.0, the Daniel Jones mistake that the Giants made, the Dak Prescott $60 million mistake that the Cowboys are eating right now. The Vikings will pay almost nothing for a really talented, high-end young quarterback the next handful of years. And $70 million in cap space to help fix the issues that create the gap between the Vikings and the Lions, the Vikings and what we saw with the Rams last night. The roster needs are obvious, and you don't have to waste time like, oh, well, we paid a quarterback $45 million. Now how do we get creative? Now you can just spend $70 million fixing your trenches, finding younger cornerbacks, and finding the explosive playmaking, in first-round pick, by the way, explosive playmaking running back that Judd just highlighted a few minutes ago. It feels terrible in the moment, but last night will turn out to be a great night in Vikings history for the long haul. They enter, I think, what will be a very high-end winning era. Kevin O'Connell, JJ McCarthy, and a monster roster.
I think the Vikings, as I talked about a few times, we're going to move on regardless. I see nothing good about embarrassing yourself for 8 quarters. They were going to move on. Like, here's the thing is, it was the fans that talked about, hey, what about Sam? And Sam comes back. Kevin O'Connell, everything he said throughout the course of the season made this out to be a 1-year, hey, we're working with Sam. It's been great. This was, in my opinion, internally, always going to be McCarthy's team. The last 8 quarters were just a complete embarrassment. I can't see this as good. Sorry.
That's because you can't see the forest through the trees, my friend.
You don't need to embarrass yourself to say, you know what, we've got a better option here.
Yeah,
like
I think
all I wanted was a competent performance, and we didn't even come close to that.
Well, everyone did, of course. But this isn't
good.
Judd, I know you're going to reflect something different in your pie chart, and we disagreed about this last night. Mm-hmm. But you and everyone else keeps talking about last night's game as if the collective was a meltdown. One guy melted down historically, in the history of the NFL playoffs. No quarterback has taken more than 9 sacks in a game. And if you go back and watch most of those sacks, it's not on the offense. The offensive line does their job for 2.5, 3 seconds. Get rid of the ball. You see multiple different times answers flashing open, tight ends, running backs, underneath routes. He's not pulling the trigger. Mm-hmm. Sam Darnold was the only guy overwhelmed by that moment and against the Lions. Historic meltdown of epic proportions. I can't like everyone's saying we like Vikings all collective, Kevin O'Connell. Sam Darnold melted down epically. Large gap, nitpick everything else. That's how I see the last 2 games, and that's how I see last night.
All right.
Good segue. Here's my hottest take. That was the last humiliating playoff loss for the Minnesota Vikings franchise before they win a Super Bowl. That was the last one. I wrote this down at halftime yesterday. I'm not saying they won't lose another playoff game. I'm saying these embarrassing clunkers from random quarterback pop-up seasons. JJ McCarthy does not lose a game like that. JJ McCarthy lost 1 game as a starter in college. He'll lose games in the NFL, but he does not lose like that. And there is added pressure on KOC to deliver now. 100%. There is. You don't win 13, 14 games and be one and done in the playoffs, get flopped by Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll, and then also get absolutely waxed at a neutral site game with a team like that. But he's a quarterback killer. He identifies the right guys, right? He actually says no to all the wrong guys. And could the Vikings maybe lose by a field goal in a game? Yes. Could they lose 35-31 in a game? They'll put up a fight. The majority of these last 3 playoff losses for the Vikings, even going back to the loss to the Niners in 2019 season with Kirk, I mean, they trailed by multiple possessions by the third quarter. Those games were done. They were blowouts. They were over with. I'm more trying to will this into existence, obviously, because I can't stand losing in this fashion. But yesterday's debacle was the last one before they win a GD Super Bowl. That type of performance will not happen again with Kevin O'Connell.
Will it? Will it into existence?
Hope you're right.
Judd is just seething right now.
Hope you're right.
At this
Hope you're
positivity.
right.
And by the way, 90% of the comments are with Judd still, even after sleeping on this thing. Someone commented, Judd carrying these guys like Brian Flores carried the Vikings all season.
Yeah, told his first 2 drives last night for the Rams.
Mackey, delusional takes by Dex and Mackey.
I like this new font.
Yeah, there's like some new
There's new stuff on here, yeah.
copium from Freezy Breezy.
It's way more. It's
Some
way
new
better.
formats in
I
here.
like it a lot.
One more thing in my unabashed defense of one of the best coaches in the NFL that people want fired inexplicably here today because they're overly emotional, and that's fine. So he's 0-2 in the playoffs. Got to hammer him. 0-2 in the playoffs. You can't win a big game. Can't win a playoff game. Okay, the Giants' home loss. I'm not saying there's no criticism deserved here. Like, the Giants' home loss, you got to find a way. I know your defense is leaky, but you got to find a way. But the quarterbacks in those 2 games for the Vikings were Kirk Cousins and Sam Darnold, who have combined 20 NFL seasons between those 2 guys. 20 combined NFL seasons. 1 playoff win. So maybe the common denominator problem here is the quarterbacks aren't high-end enough and good enough to win once you start playing the best teams in the league in the highest pressure situations, which is what Kirk's career is defined on, by the way. So again, Kevin O'Connell is elevating these dudes beyond anywhere any other coach has before. And then at the end, they come up short against either better teams or better quarterbacks, or they just like the game against the Giants. I agree. You got to win that game. But dude, 20 combined years in the NFL, 1 playoff win, and we're saying KOC's garbage for not making a run with these guys. Well, perspective here,
I'm not
folks.
saying that. I'm saying that he had a terrible game last night. He does not deserve to be fired. I mean, to be clear, it doesn't have to be the faction that wants him fired, which is a huge step, which I don't agree with. And he had a terrible night. And the fact is, if we're going to prop him up for his Frankenstein creation and Darnold's success, then he's got to take some of the fall. Like you can't just say, well, we're going to give him credit for 16 games. Great job for 16 games. And then Sam failed you. You're involved. So but there's not I feel like we're talking about like he either deserves to be fired, which is ridiculous, or he did a great job. He did a great job until he didn't, but he deserves the criticism he gets. And the fact that you don't have an answer, the fact that you came back in that game last night and still thought that Sam Darnold could drive the ball downfield in a playoff game after getting a free preview in Detroit is an issue. I mean, there's a lot to examine with what he did without ever saying the dude deserves to be fired, because he does not. He deserves his extension, but he also, and I think this will take place, has to take a long, hard look at what he asked from a quarterback who was in clear freefall. He pushed Sam Darnold to a point where he saw he couldn't get more, and he kept pushing him, and that's a problem.
What were your one more thing on this. What were your main observations about Sam Darnold during training camp? On the field.
That he could throw a great deep ball.
And
what
about the other stuff?
That he had a really good arm. Well, I told you, Sam Darnold to me immediately proved that athletically there was a reason he was the third overall pick, but KOC had to be his brain, and that meant KOC had to adjust at every turn. And Detroit, here's the problem with the Detroit game, and here's what people failed to recognize. The Detroit game was a free preview. It's disappointing. It definitely was. But it was a free pre-playoff preview of everything that you couldn't ask Sam to do at that point. And Kevin said, I can still do it.
So your main observations of Sam Darnold during training camp, you touched on it briefly there, were that he throws a great deep ball. He's more athletic than you would think, and he throws a great deep ball. And everything else was kind of a train wreck. And in the handful of practices I was at, the short intermediate stuff was super inaccurate in training camp. And so Kevin O'Connell comes out and says, okay. I have a guy that can hit home run balls. And anything else is really, I mean, even like last night, you saw wide open receivers, ball 5 yards behind him. And that was a thing. Now he had some gem, like when he was dialed in 2 months ago, he was clicking on all levels. But for the most part, Sam Darnold in his career has been a guy who chucks the ball down the field and is really bad intermediate and short, and he can't do the Tom Brady thing, which is I'm just going to paper cut you to death for 14 plays and for 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So the head coach, knowing this about Sam Darnold all season, says, I'm going to aggressively and unapologetically lean into what he is great at. And so Sam Darnold was like third in the NFL in deep pass attempts, deep pass completions, and it worked really well when they were doing that. And they got more pass interference calls. Everything else is sketch and risky and a train wreck. So we're gonna stay away from some of that stuff and lean into what's good. I can't fault a coach for dude. He leaned into what Sam Darnold can do. 35 touchdowns, 14 wins, and at the end of the season, a couple of the best teams in the NFC had an answer for it.
He leaned into
That's
it.
what happened.
He leaned into it against Detroit, got a preview of what he couldn't do, and said, screw it, we're going to try. And as I told you guys 3 weeks ago, Sam Darnold, as far as a thinking man's QB, is a vacant human being.
Exactly.
He's vacant. So if you're O'Connell, what you have to say is, I have to make all the adjustments for you, don't I? And the answer is yes. And he did not make them. He deserves criticism for that. You're trying to absolve him for something he shouldn't be absolved for.
Because we're hammering a dude who just had one of the great head coaching performances over a 4-month stretch in recent NFL history.
And there will never
people are hammering him more than Darnold in many cases. You are, for God's sakes.
And there will never be improvement in Kevin's coaching unless he gets hammered. He will hammer himself, I guarantee you, for this.
There will not be improvement in Kevin's coaching unless he gets a better quarterback. He's up there taking bullets that he has to take as a leader. You don't think behind the scenes he's not griping to his closest confidants about the fact that Sam Darnold melted down?
Sure he is.
That there was receivers flashing open for 2 straight weeks? The red zone against the Lions? What's KOC supposed to do? Step in and take a snap? Dude,
no,
step
but the
aside.
Lions, I'm telling you,
Justin Jefferson wide open in the back
you're
of the end
confusing
zone.
the two games. The Lions game, free preview of what you couldn't do against the Rams. The Rams game, stubborn. You're being stubborn by trying to do the same thing. He was running backwards, man. You've got to stop. At that point, you have to say, we have a short game. We cannot possibly put you in a position. You are melting down, which, by the way, surprised no one.
What do you think happened in the Lions game? Sam Darnold missed 5 wide open touchdown passes that were schemed wide open. That's what happened in the Lions game.
Right, but that means the Rams game, you got to come back. Short passes, the short game. The same thing, I absolved O'Connell for this against Detroit, because that was in-game. The adjustment would have been tough. You had an entire week to say, we're going to have to sort of bail on what I like if this dude is starting. And instead he said, I can bring him back. And the Rams were like, thank you very much. O'Connell fell into the Rams trap, and Sam Darnold wasn't going to save him. And everybody knew that, including me.
Yeah, I mean, if you could play that game back and say, all right, here's what we're going to do, boys. We're going to go Tom Brady discipline, and we're going to put together 12 and 13 play drives, and we're going to score touchdowns that way. You're doing something that Sam Darnold hasn't done in his entire career in the NFL. Well, so I guess it'd be interesting to go back and rewatch that game plan and see, but I just have a hard time. It's so obvious what happened. He coached up a bust and then that bust turned into a pumpkin the last 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm. But his whole
and they need to move forward with JJ McCarthy and build
absolutely.
up the roster. Like that's what happened.
But Kevin's career is built on not allowing someone to turn into a pumpkin by adjusting. He is a quarterback whisperer. Again, I don't understand how we can go how we can go 16 games and say phenomenal job, Kevin, phenomenal job, Sam, and then when things go sideways, just say it's all Sam's fault. O'Connell himself said you can't. That's not fair.
Well, you know that coaches are BS artists at podiums.
But nothing that we saw from Darnold last night shocked me. It was embarrassing to watch. It was brutal. But a week ago, I had watched, and I don't know a fraction about the game that Kevin does. I watched that and said, you can't do the same thing again because the Rams are good. And O'Connell said, screw it. We're going to do the same thing again. And that's what you got. Okay. And as Declan said, I don't like watching people be embarrassed because they didn't adjust. Football is a game of adjustments. Football is a game of actually saying, you know what I like to do today might not work. What else can I do? And he didn't do that.
Yeah, well, maybe he'll be able to make some more nuanced adjustments when he has a quarterback that has a more nuanced, layered game and sees things more clearly at the line of scrimmage.
Maybe. But the problem is, if he doesn't adjust in games and if they don't diversify the offense, I have a feeling that it's going to be repeated disappointments because Kevin O'Connell's a very smart guy. I also think he's proving to be stubborn at really bad times.
Okay. Well, the pie chart of blame is coming up here, and Judd will be the final authority on who gets blamed the most and why for last night's game. After we talk about our friends at Podrigs here, I think all of us could use a trip to Podrigs and just sit down and commiserate with each other.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. Or how about a trip to the liquor store? Or how about a trip to your favorite bar? Because good news when it comes to Podrigs, which fantastic, as it says right there, craft brew with an Irish lilt. They have a new distributorship, and guess what? 6-packs now available at, let's go through them, Lunds & Byerly's, Kowalski's, Haskell's, Hy-Vee, Total Wine, Cub, and MGM. That's right, all throughout the Twin Cities metro area. Most independent liquor stores also in the greater metro and Rochester. I have long recommended the fantastic Podrigs Red, but there's also a great dry stout, English IPA. Podrigs is so good for one reason. All they do is beer, and they do great beer. And yes, I would love a Podrigs right now. And perhaps I'll have one later this evening.
Little morning patties to start the off season.
Yeah, just start drinking it right now.
I might. I would not recommend drinking Splash windshield washer fluid, although I thought about it during the third quarter. But yeah, Splash windshield washer fluid, great for January, February, March, April, these months in the Twin Cities and Upper Midwest where the driving conditions can be. It's hard to see out your windshield. It's also like -4 degrees. You're not going to get a car wash on a day like today. So it's nice to be prepared and have an extra bottle of Splash handy when you need it. The changes in the weather. It's going to be like 36 degrees later this week. Things are melting. People are splashing gunk on your windshield. Splash windshield wiper fluid.
Apply a little splash when your windshield's getting dirty. Just apply a little splash.
That's right. And to those of you who are watching this perhaps on your very own Roku TV, we appreciate you. Roku has been the number one streaming platform for years and years and years. I used to have the old plug-in version, but now they actually just make their own TVs, their own line of smart TVs made by Roku with the Roku system built in. The Mackies grabbed a 65-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV earlier this football season that automatically adjusts picture quality for shows, movies, sporting events. It's been great for football season, great for yelling at when the Purple are trailing by 3 touchdowns in the second quarter. It listens to my gripes and doesn't talk back. Go to Roku.com to learn more or shop at a retailer near you. All right, Chef Judd's been up late into the night here.
The Rock knows.
This is actually very simple.
He gets the final say on who is the most to blame.
The smallest pie chart in the history of
Judd?
Judd doing pie charts.
Is
I
it
only
two?
have
Is
three
it
slices.
two slices? Three?
Three slices.
Oh, no prime numbers?
Only 3 slices. Nope.
Wow.
This is as straightforward as it gets. In fact, you know what? I could do the math in my head. In fact, I did. I didn't even need to add this up on the good old calculator on the phone. Let's start at the bottom and work our way up. Short and sweet. 20% goes to the offensive line. 9 sacks of the quarterback. A lot of those were his fault, but to call a spade, the offensive line did not play well. And I mean, we especially saw the faults in, as we've talked about now ad nauseum for the last couple of weeks, the interior of that line. They got pushed around. They need to make changes. They need to go spend there. If this is going to be a Super Bowl caliber team, I think there's no question that, and O'Connell talked about this as well, as you said, Phil, in the postgame, there's no question that improvements need to be made. You need to be tougher. You need to be more stout. You need at least a guard, if not exploring a Bradbury replacement at center as well. But 20% goes to an offensive line that is not as much at fault as probably some people think, but also doesn't deserve absolution. And the fact that the coach piled on, I think, was just the latest in hey, this has to be fixed.
The PFF grades are out, and it does look like the offensive line. So on those plays where like he's taken too long to throw, the offensive line still gets dinged for some of those pressures. I don't know how they nuance and massage that where, all right, we've given you 3.5 seconds, but someone leaks through Blake Brandel.
Right.
To what extent does he still get a pressure call? But I can tell you that Cam Robinson, not exactly a great lasting impression. Not that he was going to be anything more than a one and done.
Too. It's not going to help his cause.
He gave up 12 pressures in that game last night.
Could they get a comp pick for him or no?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And they will.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He's going to sign somewhere for a pretty decent chunk because he is a starting left tackle.
They're going to cost themselves, and this is not a bad thing, they're going to cost themselves comp picks through the formula because they're going to sign some upper echelon guys. Yeah. Like this is why I think the way it works is it's all a stew, right? So it's not just like that guy left and it's a comp pick. That's part of it. But so if you sign an upper echelon guard, that's going to come out of your comp pick formula. So it's really confusing. And I don't think anyone knows the exact formula for it. But yes, he could add to the comp pick potential.
Yeah. All right. So 20% to the offensive line.
Yep, 20%. 30%, Kevin O'Connell. 30% goes to a coach who is going to be the coach of the year, who deserves a contract extension and will get it. I think there's no question about that. To a coach who's led this team to, 34 victories in 3 seasons? But it was a rough night. It was a rough night. This team, to me, as we talked about a lot on Ventline last night, this team, to me, didn't come out prepared. It was surprising. It's certainly not a death knell. And I do agree completely that the actual judgment of O'Connell from a quarterback standpoint will start with McCarthy. Like on his Viking coach's gravestone, McCarthy's record will be there, not Cousins, not Darnold's. But the coach has to share in a large portion of a blame for a game that I think in the fourth quarter, in retrospect, he was trying to keep close because it was weird how the Vikings are down by 18 and they're just sort of matriculating down the field slowly. They're trying to run some, and I think he basically said, "This thing is shot, and I don't want my guy McVay to run up the score." But a particularly brutal night, so 30% goes to Kevin O'Connell. And then there's one piece left. One piece left.
I'm going to rebuttal for 15 straight minutes on that, but no, go ahead.
One piece left. 50%. Sam Darnold. It was fun while it lasted, but it came to a crashing thud. 8 quarters of just a horror show of football. Like, it's the midnight horror show of football. They could show this in theaters. Get your popcorn, get your scary masks on, and go watch those last 8 quarters of Sam Darnold, the Purple Killer. So 50% to Darnold, 30% to O'Connell, 20% to the offensive line, and there is your shortest Judd pie chart of all time.
Yeah. Here is I'll give you the wrapping.
The Rock knows how you feel about pie.
Sam Darnold, here's another criticism for the road here. Sam, thanks for the memories. We appreciated the fun regular season ride. Hopefully you didn't cost yourself 9 figures last night. Guess we'll see what the market says.
Yeah.
According to Pro Football Focus, and this goes into what I'm saying about his limitations and the lack of trust Kevin O'Connell probably has in him beyond just throwing deep passes. Intermediate passing, so when the ball travels in that intermediate zone, 10 to 19 yards past line of scrimmage, which is where the great quarterbacks that's where Tom Brady won Super Bowls. That's where Jaden Daniels actually operates as a rookie. Just boom, and he'll drop a deep pass over your head too. Sam Darnold this season led the NFL in turnover-worthy plays on intermediate throws. And he ranked bottom third of the league in accuracy rate on intermediate throws behind Mason Rudolph, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, and Joe Flacco. He is awful in the intermediate range. It's everything Judd said during training camp. That's what he was this season. Like, he was really sketchy and turnover-y in that intermediate range. And at the end of the day, if you can't dissect defenses are going to make adjustments, but if you can't fill the gaps where they are blitzing in that intermediate range, if you can't pull the trigger on crossing routes in that intermediate range, this is what happens. You're going to take sacks, you're going to throw interceptions, and they need someone, JJ McCarthy, to be able to dissect teams in that 10 to 19 yard range. It can't just be all or nothing 40-yard YOLO balls. It was it was fun for a while there, but it can't be all YOLO balls.
They also have to incorporate a consistent screen game. They've got to put in a screen game. It came, it went. Like, I will say, there were times I thought that this was the best screen game team that O'Connell has had, but it wasn't consistent. They have to incorporate that.
Yep, and he's not great at that either. Like, he's kind of fidgety, and he's got accuracy problems, and there's a lot more to dissect here too. Like Aaron Jones, I think you have a big decision to make on him. He's your best running back, but he's 30 years old.
Yeah,
and he's just not. When you play the Lions, when you play even the 49ers, hell, with all their injuries, when you play the Ravens, when you play the Eagles,
yep,
you feel it, man. Like, sometimes you feel it for a couple weeks. You got Derrick Henry running down your throat and Saquon Barkley, and the Vikings just don't have a guy that, hey, we really need 3 yards right now inside the 5-yard line. Can you please just make it happen?
Yeah.
Or an interior offensive line and a running back that make the other team feel like, boy, can we even get ready to play this next week? We got our asses kicked in that game against them. They're very finesse. They're very.
Well, it's frustrating too, though, because the whole point of training camp was to get away from that, because O'Connell knew that, and they came out of the gate pretty strong. Like, that 49ers game, which was a fun game, like, there was a lot of ass kicking on both sides, which I liked and respected. So you thought, okay, if this is the team, like, you're going to get to the playoffs potentially, and then it's going to continue. And you're right, it didn't. But yeah, your run game, you've got to have a run game. You've got to have a screen game. You have to be able to score on the ground in the red zone. There's no question about that. Like there are, the upcoming weeks will be a lot of fun to talk about, because as good as this team was in its 14 wins, there's actually a lot of things that need to probably be altered and changed a bit. And I think the Aaron Jones discussion now is pretty simple. Come back on a 1-year contract, our terms, or we're going to have to replace you.
And come back knowing that you might not be the featured number one running back if we make a play for someone in the draft. Here's another one for the road. These are notes for JJ McCarthy too. Just if you got your notebook, maybe you're consuming Purple Daily today, JJ.
More Fatih.
Pressure, yeah. Amor Fati made the ESPN Instagram too. It was accepting one's fate.
That's his second one, right? I thought he did.
He's been saying it throughout.
I think
right. No, I'm saying tweet.
Yeah, I think it's like a philosophy he just lives by.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had was it the loading, the hourglass thing? He's ready to rock and roll because he knows what's happening. But there's a little metric called pressure to sack rate, where everyone's going to get like offensive lines, even the best, are going to give up pressure on 20 to 25% of dropbacks. Josh Allen, for instance, only takes sacks on 8% of pressures. So it's like you can pressure Josh Allen, but he's going to either get rid of the ball, use his athletic ability to get out of the pocket, keep a play alive. Sam Darnold, bottom third of the league in pressure to sack rate. Last night, we can talk about KOC and blame and this and that. Just dirt the ball, man. Like literally, if you get out there, he's outside the pocket in some of these. Throw the ball out of bounds.
Well, or run.
It's 4th and 2. What do you
ran? I think it was in the fourth quarter. He finally, and he actually did this effectively during the season. He just took off. It's like, dude, if nothing else, and I know that they don't want you to, and quite frankly, I don't care. I would have rather seen him, of those 9 sacks, if on 5 of them he had said, screw it, I'll probably get in trouble, but I'm just going to run. And with the way things were going, don't even slide. Just run. Just run until you get creamed. And if you're hurt, you're hurt. And if you're not, get up and play again.
Yeah. Just, oh, man. Frustrating all around.
Rock knows how you feel about pie.
Frustrating all around. We do need to do some silver linings here, as we do after every Vikings loss. We give you nitpicks when they win and silver linings when they lose. A silver lining for you could be, if you're looking to lose weight in the new year, Livia could be that silver lining.
Oh, a massive one. In fact, Sportsnet, going back a couple of years now or more, actually went, and his friends from Livia Weight Control Centers helped him drop weight. Went back a few months back. You know what? Sportsnet needed a tune-up. Guess what? Helped him drop 15 pounds. Why? Because it's a you-centric approach, a personalized, comprehensive nutrition and lifestyle plan created just for you. Join today. Get 25% off GLP-1 weight loss meds, all doses, by the way, plus 25% off Livia's award-winning nutrition program, 9 locations here in the Twin Cities. But if you want to lose weight for the new year and you don't live in state and you are a Vikings fan, let's say in, I don't know, Tennessee, guess what? The entire program can be done virtually. It's that simple. It's a program that I can tell you from firsthand experience works. Check them out. 855-GO-LIVEA, Livia.com, LIVEA.com to schedule your free consultation today and start losing those pounds ASAP.
Also, a shout out to Minnesota Rusco jumping on board for the 2025 Purple Daily season here. Minnesota Rusco has been Minnesota's hometown remodeler since 1955. Cody and Casey have you covered, whether it's remodeling that includes windows, doors, siding, bathroom, kitchens, decks, roofing. 70 years of experience. And they're celebrating their 70th birthday sale right now, too, which means 70% off all labor, no interest, no monthly payments until 2027, and a $70 gift card free with every appointment. So if you're looking to make remodeling a reality, turn to the experts at Minnesota Rusco, minnesotarusco.com. Just like the Vikings are going to remodel their offensive line, they're going to remodel their quarterback room, maybe remodel some other things. So, all right, Dex, give us a silver lining here.
Yeah, there's a lot of holes on this roster they still got to address. They got to figure out what they're going to do in the trenches on both sides. Can they find a new running back? But my silver lining would be one of the most important things for NFL contenders is having an established pass rush. And Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel were 2 guys they brought in here that were beasts for them. Dallas Turner, although maybe a up and down season, whether it was because of playing time or injury or just getting used to the NFL, I still think has a very bright future. Rushing the passer is obviously incredibly important in today's NFL, and we saw it with the Falcons team that had literally no ability to rush the passer because they overpaid for a quarterback. The Vikings have those pillars in place, which is a great problem. You don't have to go overpay for a big edge rusher. They've signed Grenard to a good deal. Van Ginkel might be the biggest bargain in the NFL at this point, being a second-team All-Pro. That part, you got checked off. You're all good. Other holes to fill, but not one you got to worry about for at least the next few years.
Mine is this. The season is fun. It's great. Love Sundays with football and with the Vikes done now. I will miss that. But my silver lining is the off season. Ho, ho, ho. That is, I mean, March might be my favorite month of the NFL calendar, and that includes all the games. It's going to be fascinating to watch what this team does, what they build around McCarthy. And the best part is they've got cap space, which they haven't always had in the past. So you've got cap space, you got a first round pick, you got schedules in May, you got camps after that. So I love the NFL offseason.
Yeah, Judd's camp notes are just weeks away with the rookie camp after
Be back in April, lifting weights at TCO.
The program. So yeah, my silver lining is kind of similar in that this is the most cap flexibility they've had in years going into an offseason. So and they do have, they're losing some key unrestricted free agents, and you might have to remake your secondary a little bit or a lot. But you also have Theo Jackson is ready to step in as a starting safety. Judd's camp note's been all over that for 2 years.
Yeah, he's very good.
Just like Josh Metellus was after a couple years on special teams.
Yep.
Mekhi Blackman's going to be back. I think they're going to bring Byron Murphy back too. Byron Murphy junior He's still maybe 27 years old, still pretty young.
Great year.
So they've got tons of money to spend, and the biggest silver lining is the Vikings front office, led by Kwesi, but with Ryan Grigson and the scouting department, the personnel department, batted basically 1,000 on the free agents they brought in last year.
Remarkable.
So I'm not saying that they're always going to bat 1,000, but they were aces adding free agents to this team with much more limited resources than they have going into March of 2025. The draft is still very much up in the air as to whether Kwesi knows exactly what he's doing in that department, but they have a lot of space to add to a team that won 14 games in 2024.
I will defend him on this draft-wise, just as far as like where this is trending. If McCarthy steps in and plays well, and I still think that Dallas Turner is going to be a major contributor starting in 2025. I think we're going to start to see it a little bit more optimistically. Like if McCarthy is a hit or hopefully a home run, now you're talking. So the 22 draft is always going to unfortunately permeate and be a big stink because I mean it's just terrible. And like last night, ideally, if you plug in guys from that draft contributing, it might be a different result. But yeah, I think there's a lot to like about the direction here. And also, a nice thing, don't forget, all of that dead money that they carried is now gone.
Yeah, they only have $3 million in dead cap into 2025.
Wow. And they led the league, correct? In dead cap.
They were right up there
this season.
I thought the Broncos might have aced them.
Anyway, yes, that's a great point.
Battle. One last thing, because I've seen this as a theme last night on Ventline, in emails, comments, social, and today. I think we need to just maybe revisit or re-clarify the rallying cry of this podcast for the last 5 years, which is we want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. So because a lot of people maybe jumped into this show maybe last week or maybe 6 months ago. So 5 years ago when the Vikings got beat by the 49ers in the second round, it was the divisional round. They beat the Saints and then they got smoked by the Niners. But it was it was Kirk Cousins' second season. The Vikings won a playoff game. Everyone's feeling pretty good going into 2020. But we saw some things that didn't feel like they were heading in the direction of a team that could win the Super Bowl. And so our commentary for the offseason was probably more critical than praising, despite the fact that they won a playoff game. And we got a bunch of emails and comments on YouTube and Twitter. Why are you guys so negative? Why are you guys so... And we literally sat down, the three of us behind the scenes, and we kind of examined it. And the I guess where it came from, the before I die mantra on this show is whether you think Kirk Cousins is the quarterback or not, whether you think this is the right, like we're going to debate and disagree on everything here. But two things are true. We're all here as a community because we want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die. And number two, we should hold them to that standard. 64 years, they've never won a Super Bowl, but they've done everything else. They've been one of the best teams in any sport to never win a Super Bowl, right? So we should set a standard for our commentary, and also a reason why we're all here, fans, the three of us on microphones. But where this gets misconstrued sometimes from my perspective is win a Super Bowl before we die means you should blindly think and expect that every single season is Super Bowl or bust, even if logically that does not compute and make sense. For me, it's a big picture rallying cry. If Sam Darnold is your starting quarterback, yeah, it's fun to go on that magic carpet ride. And boy, he makes you, oh my gosh, after that Packers win, maybe this team does have a chance. But the reality is this team was, at the end of the day, never one of the 4 to 5 Super Bowl favorites. The expectation in 2024 was not Super Bowl or bust. That doesn't mean that the bar shouldn't still be win a Super Bowl before we die. So it's not blind loyalty to any collection of Vikings players. You must ride or die with Joe Webb, as Joe Webb's going to lead the Vikings to a Super Bowl, right?
What?
Like, there's got to be some reality baked into it.
That Packers game, you should have won that game. Bill Musgrave called a great first series.
That was a terrible head coaching game more than anything because they literally ran read option on the first.
That was Muskie.
Yeah. So I just like there's a distinction there between blindly hoping and expecting that every Vikings team wins the Super Bowl versus having a discussion baked in reality with the mantra being, hey, it's not like let's push this team to win a Super Bowl here. End of my soapbox rant.
I agree. And it also comes down to like again, what we're going to talk about in the coming months. Do you take the right steps to do that? Do you now learn from your mistakes, improve things? So yeah. And look, the McCarthy era, which hopefully starts on opening day next September, is going to be so interesting to watch. Because there will now be pressure that probably did not exist previously. Because this is a top 10. This is the first top 10 quarterback in Vikings franchise history.
Yep.
And there's going to be an expectation. There's not going to be the old, well, it's Darnold. Oh, man, he's playing well. You know, this is going to be an expectation that you got this right. And so I am super excited about where this is going, if nothing else, because there will be a standard.
Lee Feller says, you guys are frauds.
Is that Ric Flair?
Yeah, he's got the old school NWA, mid-'80s Ric Flair.
That always makes me laugh.
All right. That's a wrap on our hottest Vikings takes, putting this season to bed. We are, so you're going to see Before I Die on the Purple Daily feeds, and then we are going to pump out a second episode, TBD here. We have a couple ideas to kick off. Oh, man.
Who should be fired today?
Should they all be fired? Or should just some of them be fired? So there's much more coming your way, and then write that down. Predictions tomorrow, Thursday. Can't imagine what he wants to talk about in a couple days here. But yeah, whether you think I'm an idiot or Dex is an idiot or Judd's an idiot, we're all here because at some point we would like the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die. See ya.